Hello YouTube, Eric Weaver here, Sea Smoke Pipes. Today we're going to read an article from the fall 2009 edition of Pipes and Tobacco magazine. So, I'll warn you right now, this is going to be a little bit of a longer video. But before we do that, I'm going to show you the pipe I'm smoking. This is a Rich Lewis doublet. And that is who we're going to be reading an article about today, is Rich Lewis from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, I've been collecting a few Rich Lewis pipes. Finally got a hold of a few the last 6 months or so, and I've been loving their smoking qualities. But one of the reasons I want to read this article before I get into some other ones is that I've actually met Rich Lewis, I think, on 2 separate occasions. When I kicked off my bachelor party weekend back in 2007 or 8. 2008 must have been. We headed to Lewis Tobacco Shop, me and a couple of buddies. And I didn't have much money, so I couldn't buy a pipe at the time, but I did buy some tobacco and a couple odds and ends. This little plastic pipe stand that I use every day. And anyway, Rich was kind enough to kind of just let me watch him work and answer a few questions and have a smoke and talk, and found him to be a really nice guy. Then about a year later, I was in the Twin Cities again. And I called him up, and he agreed to, let me come and stop by and hang out for a few more hours and just kind of watch him work. He certainly wasn't teaching me, but he was just showing me how he does some things and just chit-chatting about pipe making in general. And it was a great experience. And I've always been a big admirer of his pipes. And unfortunately, I can't really afford any new, but I did snap a few up in the last half a year. And I'll show you those now before we read the article. So the first one I bought was number 867. And this is a rusticated Canadian pot. It has this older logo on it. Very nice pipe. I smoke a lot of Latakias in this and love it. And Rich Lewis has a great dating system. All his pipes are numbered. He started numbering them at 100. And this pipe dates from August 13th of 1987. So this is actually coming up on its anniversary in a couple of days. So I'll be sure to smoke that. It'll be 33, I guess, this year. 33 years old. This guy's been making pipes for 45 plus years. He's been in the business, as you'll soon find out from the article. So that's the first one I got. Love it. And I picked up this Rich Lewis Lovat just a couple of months ago. Thick-walled. He makes big pipes, but they're actually light for their size. And this is with his newer logo, Lewis. And his son is actually making pipes with him as well. I think his son has been making pipes probably for at least 5 years. I've never met his son, but I hope to someday. And this is a natural grade. And that pipe is number 1983, and that dates from May 2nd of 2013. So 7 years old. And then I recently couldn't resist snapping this one up on eBay. This is a bent Dublin, and this one is number 684. So this one dates from June of 1984. And so this is a somewhat older pipe, original finish. It does have a replacement stem, but it was replaced by Rich Lewis himself. So you can see by the newer stem logo on the replacement stem. It originally probably would have had the green dot with a brass dot inside. So, oh, by the way, today I'm smoking a little McClelland's 3 Oaks from 2007, or 2017, sorry. Smokes great in these bigger, bold pipes. Also, if you guys listen to Pipes Magazine radio show, Brian Levine did an excellent interview with Rich back in February, I believe it was. And he goes over a lot of the same stuff in this article, but it's a little more updated. He talks about his son and things like that. So I would encourage you to go check that out as well. And definitely go check out Lewis Pipes, or lewispipe.com, where you can, he has a huge photo gallery of a lot of previous work. He has some of his sketchbooks scanned for PDFs for how you can see how he keeps track of his dating. And just really nice guy, excellent pipe maker. So, let's get reading. This article is by Russ Ochslin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but Music, Tobacco, and Pipes. Rich Lewis of Lewis Tobacco in Minneapolis has spent 35 years improving his skills as a pipe maker, a pipe repairman, and a tobacco retail shop proprietor. At 6 feet 4 inches tall, Rich Lewis is a big guy who likes to make and smoke big pipes. One of his most recent freehand creations that sold the minute it was finished has a 3-inch diameter with a bowl depth of 2.75 inches, and he is constantly busy. In his small shop on Marquette Avenue in downtown Minneapolis, Lewis hand sands his pipes behind the retail counter while customers drop in to check out his latest work and solve the world's problems. Lewis knows his market. Holding his current project, he explains, "This one is a little bit bigger, but I try to make small stuff occasionally too. The American market has always been for a little bit larger pipes. Casual smoking is difficult since you can't smoke in public anymore. I don't see a lot of demand for real small stuff, maybe for some women." Reaching under the counter, Lewis finds some pipes that he says was made in the Upshall factory. They were probably chasing flaws, which would account for the bowls being so small. They had a bunch of these. I bought them mostly for women who want something that small. Lewis has been carving pipes for about 35 years. This was written in 2009. He began shortly after taking over his father's shop, or his father's business, the tobacco shop, just a year out of high school. The inside of the bowl is not real large. I might expand it a little bit with sanding cones if I need to, or I can go to a bigger drill bit, but the monster insides are just too difficult to smoke. It takes a lot of draw to keep that burning. That's why large pots are so difficult to smoke. Who can constantly keep that burning? Dad had only owned the store a couple years. He was interested in making pipes too. I found correspondence with several European pipe makers, Danish especially, so he had the idea to start bringing some of that in. He also brought in some repair equipment. When my father died, I took it over and just stumbled through. It was learned by doing, with a bit of direction from one particular customer, a first chair bass player for the Minnesota Orchestra. The thing I am interested in is shaping. That's number one. For years I never had a lathe. I only got one in the mid-'80s, 10 years after I started carving. Not having a lathe really helped me. I made a lot of standardized shapes. through the freehand craze, though the freehand craze was going then, two things happened that changed my pipe making dramatically. One was meeting the importers Pete and Rob Siegel from New York. My creds came from my relationship with the Siegels. They needed someone who could do quality repairs, Lewis says. They took him into several European pipe factories where he says he learned from some of the best. The trips raised my level of quality from maybe a 5 or a 6 to an 8. Lewis uses a lot of files. That's the way they taught me at the factories. Now I'm authorized for repairs at pretty much all the major brands. Ashton, Sir Jacopo, Upshall, Radici, and Becker, among others. They send them here because instead of Europe. A large part of my business is retrofitting stems. I have to make them look like they went to Europe. The other thing that was really helpful to me was Pete and Rob being extremely critical of the stuff I was doing, especially in the styling. The classic shapes, the billiards, the Canadians. It was really all about the shape of the bowl. Pretty good, huh? Even though he makes many freehands, Lewis says the Old English style classic shapes are really what he is all about. To me, this is what has separated me out from other pipe makers. Guys who are buying my pipes are collectors of that old stuff. So I think it's a compliment when they say they like the styling of my pipes. You look at the Costello billiards, they don't look anything like the English style. They are very much a more potish style. Pointing to a picture of a Sir Jacopo billiard in an Italian book, Lewis says, "Now that's a great pipe." Savinelli makes the nicest machine-made pipes of anybody. Their stylings are definitely the classical English shapes. Someone knew what they were doing when they did that because the machine-made pipes are made from a template. A working class background helps Lewis relate to his clientele. Lewis grew up in the Camden area, a working class neighborhood in North Minneapolis. Today he lives not far away on the northeast side. His father was a home builder who bought the pipe shop later in life. With more than 60 kids on his block in the 1950s, ball playing came naturally. Today Lewis is in his 30th year playing softball for the White Horse Pipe Company team, sponsored by his shop. Lewis explains that his background helps him relate to his tobacco shop customers who come on foot, on bicycles, in buses, or BMWs. With as wide of a range of personalities as their transportation choices, they're not just attorneys. We have a lot of working class people, and because I grew up in a working class neighborhood, I totally relate to them. Wearing a New York Yankees cap in Twins territory, Rodney stops in early on Friday afternoon just to kibitz. He can't smoke in the shop unless Lewis installs a different ventilation system. A victim of a hit-and-run accident when he was on his bike, Rodney is still limping months later. Lewis rides his bike to the shop too, or takes the bus. Steve Summers, who works in technology, forms the beginnings of a small crowd in the shop a few minutes later and explains he has been a cigar smoker. I was coming here so much I felt obligated to give a pipe a try, and at that point I figured I should buy one of Rich's pipes. That was 7 or 8 months ago, so I don't have a lot of experience. Noting that he's 50, for as long as I can keep it there. Once I lost my hair, I kind of gave up on age, Summers says he prefers Latakia blends in his pipe. In addition to Lewis's handmade pipes, he says he has Sir Jacopo's too. I have some nice pipes to look at. All big pipes? They're certainly not small. Without a doubt, I like a bigger bowl. I have one I want to bring back and have Rich make the bowl a little bit bigger. I thought pipe smoking would be easy, just shove some tobacco in and light it up, but apparently there's a little more nuance to it than that. I have more success with a wider bowl, but when it's right, it's really the most enjoyable smoke. I had a good pipe the other night, smoked about an hour and a half. And boy did I enjoy that the whole time. A new customer, 32-year-old Jay Taquito, I can't pronounce it, was given a small pipe as a gift from a friend who switched to larger pipes. He had been smoking cigarettes and cigars for 6 or 7 years. Lewis started him smoking Lane's 1Q, which he considers his house blend, the most popular of his dozens of selections. Lewis made sure he had a nail in a tamp or two, and even went so far as to show him how to pack his first bowl. Light it real well, tamp it, and relight it, he explains to the newbie. Here's a picture of Rich, one of his pipes. Reminiscent of Wimpy, the mooch of Popeye cartoon fame, Summer tells Lewis to put his purchases on my tab. I'll probably give you money on Monday. In an aside, he explains, it's probably worth what I owe him if I never come back, even though I think I'm his muse. I think his work has gotten far better since he met me. Summers turns the knife a bit more, noting, on occasion, Rich turns out a pretty decent pipe. He's got to make a lot of them. If you want to talk about airbrushing, just look at his website. Giving him a hard time there. He's really good with Photoshop. Those pipes look really good on the website. Then you come in here and look at one, and it's, what's this? With the laughter guiding him, Summers gets more ribbed up. I really think he buys his pipes. You see all those tools back there? It makes it look like he does this stuff. Taking advantage of the moment, Lewis interjects that Summers is really more like television's Leave It to Beaver character Eddie Haskell than Wimpy. All kidding aside, this is a great place to come, Summers notes. The store is who the owner is. Tobacco is about socialization. I wish this place was bigger and we could smoke in here. It's fun to be in here smoking. Pipe smoking Sam, who good-naturedly declined to give his last name, has been smoking 1Q in estate pipes for about a year. I'm in the Econo realm here. I've tried others, but suburban Golden Valley attorney Mickey Greenberg has an office in his home, one of the few offices where anyone can still smoke. While he's downtown, Greenberg stops to pick up 2 half-pound bags of Blackbird, a blend of Black Cavendish and Virginia Flake, an aromatic that he says even pleases his wife. That's the best. I like it the best, Greenberg says of Blackbird, adding that he has been smoking Blackbird or something like it for more than 10 of the 40 years he's been smoking. He buys a pound at a time because he isn't often downtown. Surprisingly, Greenberg says he hasn't bought a pipe for about 3 years, but instead smokes his father's old pipes and some he has found at flea markets too. Lewis hasn't considered a more fashionable suburban location. The difficult part is anticipating whether we're going to be taxed out of existence. You can't really plan ahead to do stuff like that. You need to build a lounge for cigar smokers. That's the new reality of it, he explains as he hand buffs his latest pipe while commiserating with his customers. Another anonymous customer comes in seeking a replacement for his only corncob, and a stranger who hopes to quit smoking is seeking some smokeless cigarettes. You'd probably be slitting your own throat, but I've smoked for 30 years. I've paid my dues to the tobacco companies. Lewis tells him that he's considered a smokeless products, but he couldn't decide on what brand to stock. The shopkeeper also explains that some anti-smoking laws make no sense. Like the one in St. Paul that lets a person buy a single cigar but bans the sale of single cigarettes. They want you to buy and smoke a whole pack. Not missing an opportunity to make his point about taxation with another customer asking for a good cheap cigar, Lewis shoots back, that depends on how cheap you're referring to. Had some at $2 before the new taxes kicked in. Lewis's business has not been helped by the most recent increase in tobacco taxes and anti-smoking efforts. In addition to the federal burden, Minnesota recently imposed a 70% tax on the wholesale price. That's $700 on $1,000 worth of tobacco, he explains in disgust. I'm not a big fan of the governor since he raised our taxes so high on tobacco. He's a Republican. I'm a conservative Democrat who voted for Jesse Ventura because I couldn't stand Norm Coleman or Skip Humphrey, Hubert's kid. Jesse was a total failure in my mind, but I would do it again because I think it's good to have a third party. While Pawlenty ran, he said he was not going to raise taxes. So it's only a fee. But that's why I'm working here by myself now. I couldn't afford to have another employee. Still, it's hard to create and repair while running the counter. Business was already down after Lewis moved Lewis Tobacco from a location across the street from Neiman Marcus, but it has been building again in the last couple of years. His pipe business is second to cigars, but well ahead of cigarettes. And an update, he's actually recently moved again, probably within the same block that he was when this was taken. Last time I was here, he was in this location on Marquette. Now I think he's a little further down. You have to be in the pipe business to sell tobacco, though my inventory is pretty low right now. I looked at buying some Nording type freehands, then I just thought, why am I doing this? I could just make them 3 in one afternoon and retail them for $150. I'm going to get a stamp that says freehand without my serial number. I want to separate them from my regular line. Between customers, Lewis says he's really enjoying recreating pipes from the past. The retro pipes that are in high demand, like the old Barling Quaints. While he also enjoys smoking them, Lewis says he has curtailed smoking some since having a heart attack. I had to appease the doctors somehow. The pipe maker is to the point of putting some alcohol-based walnut stain on the pipe in his hand as he continues to stand behind the cash register. In addition to style, Lewis is persnickety about small details, like where the draw hole meets the bowl in his pipes. For the pipes that I make, I drill this hole, the draw hole, first. Then I bring the bowl down to it. It's probably an odd way to do it. A lot of European guys sort of freehand it, which is always a bit difficult thing to do. I bring the bowl hole down to the draw hole. That way it's always on the bottom, and I actually drill a little pilot hole to see if everything is lined up. Shift the block in my chuck left to right so you'll get something perfectly centered on the bottom. His favorite bit is a V-shaped, a recut spade bit. I drill the draw hole out a little bit bigger. Years ago, I started out with 1/8 of an inch. Now I use a 5/32 or even an 11/64. When you start to smoke any pipe, the wood will swell a bit with the moisture in it. So going a little bit bigger, the airflow is definitely better. And then there's a little bit of a smaller article written in here about his music career. He's also a musician, but I'm not going to read that today. You guys could look him up online. He has been a musician in the Minneapolis area for years. Lewis tries to make his bits 4 millimeters thick at the bite point with a long taper to that mark. He uses lucite primarily and checks the size with calipers to make sure he's right. The mouthpiece is important to Lewis. In general, it's half the pipe, and it's an important part for me. It's the part that's going into your mouth. It's got to have a good feel. I spend a lot of time on that. My repair work has led me to defining my pipes even more with the mouthpiece because I'm looking at all the little nuances that all the individual makers do, and they all do have little nuances. It's interesting. When I'm getting ready to finish my stuff, I'll sand it usually to about 320 grit sandpaper, stain it, buff it, and resand it. That way I can see where highs and lows in the wood are. If there are any rougher sanding spots, I can take it down again to restain. Then I'll go to 320 and eventually to 400. Some go to 600. I don't quite go to that level. I try to let the buffing wheel do the work. A ruler shows a finished pipe depth of 2.75 inches with the bowl tapered out only at the very bottom. I don't like a real rounded or a really severe taper. I think that design tends to smoke a little bit wet, and people have always commented how nicely my pipes smoke. His finished pipes are simply polished with carnauba and buffed. It takes longer to make a billiard than a freehand. You're more restricted. Someone once said if you gave 100 blocks of wood to 100 monkeys, you'd have 100 freehands and not one billiard. I don't say that to disparage the other things, but it is much easier to chase flaws when you know there's no limit on the design. The high-end Danish guys aren't really making freehands, but free forms. It's a totally different thing. Louis bemoans the closing of the Stanwell factory in Denmark, the last pipe factory in that country. The 50% decline in pipe smoking there in recent years mirrors what he thinks has happened elsewhere as well. It says something about trying to prevent the outsourcing of jobs these days, and it follows right along with things like just one company making cigar humidors in this country anymore. Marketing is much different now than when Louis inherited the business. For one thing, Louis explains, an ad in the Yellow Pages isn't as important as a website today. You have to have a website. The internet allows you to have a constantly updated full-color catalog distributed around the world and get orders at any time for only a couple bucks a month. While he wonders if he wants his kids to someday get involved with his shop, Louis admits this is a tough industry to be in. It's one of the last mom and pop like businesses. But he hopes he might someday semi-retire. Pipe making would be a great retirement job. There are a lot of good pipe makers out there, but to do it all as a full-time employment is difficult. Rich Louis, LouisPipes.com. All right, well, thanks a lot for joining me. I know this is a longer video, but I wanted to try to make sure and do justice to that article. Again, that was Pipes and Tobacco, Fall 2009. It's just one more example about all the great articles that were in that magazine, and I would highly encourage any of you to seek out back issues of that and to buy them. Again, I'll give you one last look at this Rich Louis Dublin. Beautiful grain. It's nice Lavat. And this nice long Canadian pot. A super comfortable mouthpiece. All right, thanks a lot for watching, guys and gals. You take it easy. Happy smokes. Bye.